Good afternoon. My name is Specialist Savoy, and today I will be briefing you on interpersonal communication. So today's briefing is unclassified. Our risk assessment is low. If there is an emergency, we have emergency exits to our left and our right. If we need to exit the room, we're going to get up in an orderly fashion, remain calm, and we're going to exit to the safest location designated outside. So for today's briefing, once again, I'm going to be briefing on you on interpersonal communication. So one may be asking themselves, what is interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is the process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, or feelings from one person to another. It can be done verbally or nonverbal. And this is usually done face-to-face, but it can be done in the written form of communication. So when we talk about interpersonal communication, we're not just talking about the message, we're talking about the feelings, the thought, and the idea of the message. We're going to take into consideration the person's feelings and how they're talking, may it be the tone of voice or their facial expressions, and how the receiver is getting the information. Are they rolling their eyes? Are they sighing? But we'll go deeper in depth with that. So I'm going to cover 3 types of communication during today's brief. The first type of communication will be verbal. Verbal communication is the most efficient and most direct form of communication. It is also the most common. With verbal communication, it is either done verbally like I'm doing now or used with sign language. The next type of communication I'm going to talk about is nonverbal. Nonverbal are those body gestures, facial expressions, i.e. rolling your eyes or talking with your hands. These can be done both consciously and unconsciously, so we have to pay attention when we're talking. The third type of communication that I'm going to be briefing you on is written. Written communication is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be your text messages or your emails. So with interpersonal communication, a lot of times people think it's a one-way road. So there's going to be one receiver and one sender, one person saying a message and one person taking in that message. We really have to get away from that. With communication, it's always going to be a two-way street. So both the sender and the receiver are going to receive messages and send. Like I was talking about nonverbal, it could be the shaking of the head in agreement, the shaking of the head in disagreement, rolling your eyes, smiling as to tell the speaker to continue, maybe crossing your arms in disbelief or to disagree with what they're saying. But once again, I will hit that up a little more further in our brief. So interpersonal communication is going to be used throughout your entire day. You're going to use interpersonal communication with every altercation that you have throughout the day. May it be me talking to my first line supervisor, may it be me talking to my soldiers. I'm going to have to use these skills in every aspect. So what do strong interpersonal skills look like, and how can they be used in your advantage? So with strong interpersonal skills, it allows you to team build more. You actually take in information. You're able to talk to people. You're not closed-minded. You're able to have conversations, and they're not short. You care about how people think. You care about what people think about, how they feel. So we're just going to use those when we interact with our soldiers. So when we talk about interpersonal communication, we can break it down into elements. So the first element that I'm going to brief you guys on is the message. The message is pretty self-explanatory. It's what's being said. But remember how I said we're not just worrying about what's being said, but how it's being said. So with the message, you want to use the proper tone. You want to say your message clearly so that receiver understands what's being said. You want to be open to that person asking you questions, so you would have to elaborate more on your message. Let's say your soldier doesn't understand the message that you're saying. With interpersonal communication, you have to be able to pull yourself together, so to speak, and understand where that soldier's coming from and be able to answer any of those soldiers' questions. So the next element that I'm going to brief you guys on is noise. So noise can be anywhere from sounds in the background that are going to mess up what the sender's actually trying to say, it alters the message. That's what noise basically does. It alters what your sender is saying. So let's say you're talking to your soldier in the motor pool, and there's a whole bunch of noise going on. May it be hammering from welders, may it be mechanics taking off tires, and your receiver doesn't understand. Or it can be anywhere from you crossing my hands, talking to you, me rolling my eyes. That can also be considered noise. And those nonverbal cues. That noise distracts the receiver. That message isn't getting through clearly. So how do we improve our interpersonal communication? Once again, we have to remember that conversation is a two-way street. We have to broaden our view. We can't be so closed-minded when maybe our superiors, our soldiers come to talk to us. We have to be willing and able to have conversation. We also have to be friendly and polite. Let's say I come up to you and I go to talk to you and your arms are crossed. Does that give off the idea that you want to talk to me? Or even if you're in a great mood, or let's say you're rolling your eyes at everything I say, do you think that's going to make me want to talk to you? And that's how we have to look at it as our subordinates. Let's say our soldier's coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Sergeant, I need help with something," and your arms are crossed. That soldier's not going to want to come to you. So this is where interpersonal ties into everything, leadership. But I'm going to talk about that just a little bit more coming up. So another one of those elements is respond to conversation. We're not going to and yes people to death. Actually engage in conversation. If somebody walks up to you, don't them. Maybe give an open-ended question so that they continue the conversation. They see that you're engaged and that you're willing to talk to them. So, question being for some, how do I improve my interpersonal communication skills? And how do I apply them to my everyday life in the Army? So, like I was saying, I'm going to give an example. Let's say one of our soldiers walks up to us with a personal problem, and you are their first line. So, strong interpersonal communication helps with leadership. It builds trust between you and your subordinates. It allows your soldier to know that you are somebody they can come and talk to. Just that right there could help a soldier any day. Being their first line supervisor, you're supposed to be there for your subordinates through thick and thin and throughout anything. So with strong interpersonal communication, it allows me to converse with my soldiers. I'm not narrow-minded. I'm willing to talk to my soldiers. I don't cross my arms as to tell my soldiers, I don't want to talk to you. This is a waste of my time. We have to remember that they came to you for a reason. You're their first line supervisor. You're their caretaker in essence. We have to remember this. Let's say your soldier is really having a problem and all it takes is for you to have that simple talk and it could change their thoughts of life for the better times 10-fold. We have to remember this. So that's how we apply this to the Army. We open up and we allow ourselves to talk. If we ask soldiers, what's the biggest problem in the Army? 9 out of 10 times they're going to say communication. The lack of communication. Although some of us are great at communicating, you can always learn. And you can always get better. So throughout today's brief, I talked about the types of communication, how they worked, what aspects you used when dealing with them. I talked about how to become a better communicator and how interpersonal communication affects us as leaders. Remember, we are leaders, so we need to communicate. We need to be successful at communicating. So at this time, I'm going to ask, does anyone have any questions of me? Can I hit furthermore on any point of my brief? Is there anywhere that I did not go in depth enough? If not, this is going to be the end of my brief. I hope you really did take something out of it. And remember, we're leaders. We have to be able to communicate. That's the difference between a successful mission and disaster. All right, that's all that I have. Have a great day.